Hello everyone, welcome to this tutorial in which we are going to discuss a problem called find the repeating and the missing number in an array. So let's first understand the problem statement. So problem statement is you are given a read-only array of n integers from 1 to n. Okay, so each integer appears exactly once except a, which appears twice, and b, which is missing. So we need to return this a and b. Okay, so what is the meaning of read only? That you cannot modify this particular array. You need to create another array for getting this thing done. Okay, and the second is even if you don't create another array, but you cannot put the modified values into this array. So this is only read only array. You cannot write any values to this array. And second thing to note down is the integers in the array are from 1 to n, and the size of the array is also n. So basically there are n integers from 1 to n, so only one among them is appearing twice and only one element is missing. Okay, so let's understand this with the help of an example. Suppose this is the input array 3 1 2 5 3. So here, as you can see, there are 5 elements and they are numbered from 1 to 5, but there is one element which is repeating twice, which is 3, and there is only one missing element, which is 4. So it is very obvious that if one element is repeating, exactly one element will be missing out. Why? Because there are n elements and they are numbered from 1 to n. So if one element repeats exactly twice, so exactly one array element will be missing. Okay, so in this case 1 3 is repeating instead of 4. Okay, if 4 is present and 1 3 is missing, so it will become 1 2 3 4 5, which is the exact perfect array. Okay, so you just need to return a pair or a vector consisting of the repeating first and then the missing element in this array. We hope that you have understand it. If not, just pause this for a minute, understand this problem statement and with the help of this sample case, and you will get to understand. Okay, so let's move forward to the first solution, which is using extra space. So in this tutorial we are going to cover approach 1 only, which is by making use of some extra space, and then we'll dive into a more space convenient or space efficient approach in which there is no need to take any extra space. And remember, during this time the array that we are dealing with is only a read only array, that is, you cannot modify any of the values in this array. Okay, so yeah, so the approach is you need to create a vector temp of size n plus 1. So why n plus 1 size? Because as told earlier that the array elements are from 1 to n. Okay, so in order to store them as indices, I'll explain you as we move forward. So we are creating a vector temp in which each of the index would be that particular element. Okay, so if we need to move till index n, so what should be the size of the array? It should be n plus 1. Okay, as the indices are from 0 to n minus 1. So initialize all the values of temp to minus 1. Okay, then loop through all the n plus 1 elements of the temp. Why n plus 1 elements? Because the size is n plus 1 and indices would be from 0 to n. Okay, so if any value of temp is already minus 1, then that number, index of temp, is the repeating number. Okay, so let me help you understand this logic. Suppose if we create a temp array initialized to okay, let's just modify the thing here. So if we create a temp vector of size, here n is 4, so let's create of size 6, and initially we make all as minus 1. So there would be 6 minus 1s, 3 4 5 6. Okay, now what's the second step? Initialize all to minus 1, loop through all the n plus 1 elements of the temp. Why n plus 1? Because numbers are n, so, but we have created a vector of size n plus 1. Okay, so if any value of temp is already minus 1, then that number, index of temp, is the repeating number. Okay, so let's understand what is happening here. What we need to do, we need to traverse through all the vector elements. Okay, so suppose 3 comes, so what we need to do, we need to update the value at index 3 as that particular value, or basically we need to set it as 1 instead of minus 1. So suppose we visit 3, so we mark the value at that particular index as 1. Okay, then if we visit 1, here it should be comma, this is the input element. Okay, so if we visit element 1, then what we need to do, we need to set the value present at index 1 as 1. Now we visit 2, so let's do the same, update it to 1. we visit 5. So let's update the value at index 5, which is this value, as 1 instead of -1. And finally we visit 3 again. So as you can see, we have visited 3 again, and what we come to know that it is already set to 1 and not -1. And this is how we identify that this is a repeating element. Let me once again explain that this is an extra element. Why we are making of size n+1? Because we need to take these values as the index in this particular vector. So as the values are in the input array, as the values are from 1 to n, so indices here should be till n. Okay, so values should be n+1. Then only we will have index from 1 to n when number of elements are n+1. So ignoring 0, then only we can cover till 5. I hope you have understood this. If not, just pause and revisit the previous part once again. You will understand it. Okay, so this way, if any of the element is already 1, we could identify that this is the missing element. Okay, sorry, this is the repeating element. So here 3 would be made repeating because that index value is already set to 1 instead of -1. So we know that it has been already visited. To speak the right term, we will call it already visited, and hence we'll get to understand that it is the repeating element. Now how to find? So it is very simple, that we know that while traversing the vector, if any of the value is present as -1, so it means it has not been covered while traversing this vector, and that way we understand that the index value at this particular position is the answer to the missing element. So here what is the index? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the value present at 4th index is -1. This means that we haven't covered value 4 in this particular array, otherwise we would have set it to 1, right? So that's why we understand, okay, so this is the particular element which is missing and we output it. So this would be better explained when I am writing the code. So let's dive to the code section. Okay, so let's have a vector of int as the input. Let's call it a equals to 3 comma, what's the value? 3 1 2 5 3 3 comma 1 comma 2 comma 5 comma 3. And what is the output that we expect? We expect a output that the repeating element is 3 and the missing element is 4. Okay, so let's take this in the vector answer equals to find missing. Okay, instead of this 9, let's write solve and pass this particular vector. Okay, so what will this method return? It will return a vector having 2 elements, where first element would be the repeating element and the second element would be the missing element. So let's write it down. The repeating element is equals to, what would be your answer of 0, because we are passing it in that manner. Okay, first the repeating and then the missing. So let's rewrite this, and the missing element is what? Answer of 1, because answer would return a vector of 2 elements. First element is the repeating one and second element is the missing one. Now let's write the actual code. So let's define what should be the return type? Vector, because as you can see here we are collecting it in a vector of int, so that should be the return type, vector int. Name of the method solve. What would be the input parameter type? Vector of int, let's call it a, and let's return let's create another vector of int, vector int answer, and let's return answer. Okay, the main logic would come here when we need to create the vector answer. Okay, so let's come to the logic. What's the logic? Create an array of size n+1, array or vector, anything. Okay, so let's do this. What can be done? First we need to find what n is. N refers to the number of elements present in the given vector, so that we have computed. Now let's create a vector int named temp of size n+1, each initialized with -1. Okay, so this particular line, what it does, it declares as well as initializes an array named temp of size n+1 having all the initial values as -1. Okay, so this is the syntax for defining and declaring a vector having all the elements as -1. If you write 0, so it would be set to 0 and so on. Okay, so this is how we have done it. Now let's loop over all the elements as discussed in the logic. Let's loop over all the elements. So how to loop over all the elements? Just write auto val in vector A. Okay, so let me explain you what I have written here. This is another form of looping over all the values of a particular vector or array or anything. You can just write auto val colon the name of the vector, and what will val store? Val will store each of the consecutive value of this particular vector. Okay, so first it would be at 0th index, then first index, then second index, and so on. Or let's do this later on. Let's start with the basic logic. Int I equals to 0, I is less than n, I plus plus. Okay, so what we do, if temp of a of I, so it might not be that easy to understand in the first go, but let me explain you. What are we doing? We are sure that the vector A consists of elements from 1 to n. Okay, so that's why we are sure that each of the indices will be present in temp, which is of size n plus 1. Okay, so we know that n plus 1 size means indices ranges from 0 to what? N. From 0 to n. Okay, so 0 to n, if you know that it is n plus 1 elements, so that's why size is n plus 1. Okay, and if temp of a of I is -1, is -1 means that this value is not filled yet. Okay, so what we do, as we are visiting it for the first time, or we call it unvisited, so that's why we'll visit it by setting 1, stating that this particular element has already been visited, so mark it 1. And if it is not -1, so what it could be? It could be definitely 1. Okay, because there is no other way to get the value stored in it. Okay, it has been initialized to -1, and this is the only place where we are setting its value to 1. Okay, so if it is not -1, it is definitely 1, and if it is 1, we are sure that we have visited it before, then only its value can become 1. So let's push this into the answer vector. Push back. What should we push back? A of I. Why A of I? Because it is the array element that is repeating twice. Okay, just pause this video for a minute and then you will understand it better, like what are we doing here. Okay, so yeah, so let's loop over. And one more thing, there is no need to break here. Okay, let me write it here to understand another logic. If we write break here, then what will happen? As soon as we find the repeating element, it will break without setting each of the elements as 1. Okay, so this would create problems while finding the missing element. So that's why there is no need to break. We need to anyhow loop till the end of the array or the end of the vector in order to get the missing element as well. Here we are only occupying or only finding the repeating element, but this part is very important to find the missing element as well. How? Let me show you. So now let's loop once again from int I equals to 1, I is less than or equals to n, I plus plus. Okay, so first understand this. Why are we ranging from 1 to n plus 1? Basically n, I is n. Okay, so now what are we doing? We are finding the missing element. So if temp of I equals to -1, so what does this mean? If temp at this particular index, which is we are ranging from 1 to n, it is -1, it means what it means? That it hasn't been found in A, because if it was present in A, then definitely we have set that index to we have definitely set the value at that index to 1. Okay, but it is -1, it means that it was not present in the vector A. just pause the video for a minute and repeat this part once again. You will definitely understand. Let me repeat that for you. Temp of I equals to -1. Why -1? Because it was not covered, or it was not set as 1 in this particular piece of code. Okay, why it was not set 1 in this piece of code? Because this value was not present in A. Okay, then only if it is not present in A, then only we cannot get it here, and then we cannot set it to 1. Okay, I hope that you have understood it. Then just push back this value into the vector, and let's break. Why break? Because we know that this is the missing element, and these two are the only values that we were looking for. So that solves the problem. We can understand with the help of this code, this particular example, 31253. Okay, let's first check whether this code is running fine or not, and then we can obviously understand the remaining thing. Okay, it is giving error, answer was not defined. Okay, semicolon is missing. Okay, compiled successfully. Okay, the repeating element is 3 and the missing element is 4. So the repeating element is 3 and the missing element is 4. Okay, our code is running fine. Let's make one more change. Instead of this, let's do it 1 1 1 2 5 3. Instead of 5, let's write 4. So 1 1 2 4 3. So what should be the answer? Repeating element is 1 and missing element is 5. Let's see what our code prints. Repeating element is 1, missing element is 5. Okay, great. So it is working fine. So let's understand once again with the help of this example. What are we doing? We know that these values are ranging from 1 to n. Okay, so that's why we create a temp of size n plus 1. So in this case n was 5, so we create temp of size n plus 1, each value initialized to -1. So this is the logic that we are going to discuss again and again while understanding the concept of DFS and BFS, because it also makes use of a visited array in order to make sure that which vertices have been visited and which not. Okay, so initially all are -1. Now what we do, whenever we come across a particular element, we set that index. So element number is 3, so with that we set value at that index, which is third index, as 1. Then 1 comes, so we set the value at index 1, which is the second element, as 1. When 2 comes, we do this. When 5 comes, we do this, and finally when 3 comes, we do the value at index 3 as 1. But as we can see, it is already 1. So this means that there is previous occurrence of this particular element, and hence we have set it as 1. So we get to know that if it is not -1, then this is the repeating element. We are sure about it. And finally, when we traverse through 1 to n, why we are ignoring this particular element? Because elements are from 1 to n, so there is no need to check for the 0th index element. It will always be -1. I hope you understand it. You can pause and understand this logic once again. Okay, so when we loop from 1 to n, whichever value is -1, that index is the missing element. Why? Because that value has not been set as 1 before. So when we are looping from 1 to n, if any particular element is -1, that is the missing element. That index is the missing element. Okay, and just store this and print this out. So you will get access to this code, and it will definitely help you understand this in a very better manner. So thanks for watching.